It is the Tuesday edition of the Lombardi Line. Dave Ross here at Circus Sports, fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada RGM. Michael Lombardi back home on the East Coast. Michael, to quote the late, great Jack Buck, I don't believe what I just saw.
Wow.
What a game last night to wrap up week number 13. The Broncos somehow get the money and the cover, 41-32, so they do cover the 6 somehow. The total actually came down and closed 41.5, Michael. Almost got that in the first half of this game. Where did it begin with one of the wildest Monday nights I've seen in quite some time?
I don't know where to begin, but, I think we have to start with when you're playing with James. I mean, let's start with this. This is how bad Deshaun Watson is, because all these players were there when Deshaun was there, and they couldn't move the ball. They couldn't get 100 yards at all, and now they can. So now they look like an explosive offense against a very good defense. So, if you're a Cleveland Brown fan, you weren't going to the playoffs, but I think what you realize now, and if you're in Cleveland Brown front office, is what a disaster this contract was. And it keeps getting reinforced every single game you watch Jameis Winston play, because forget all the pick sixes he had, 2 of them. The fact is he can move the football. And let's be clear, Nick Chubb isn't the same Nick Chubb we once knew, right? He's not back to where he wants to be. So if they can improve their running game and what they've got going offensively against a very good defense, they've got to get back to it. So to me, a couple elements. Obviously, the pick sixes were a problem. Bo Nix I thought was great. The Tampa 2 throw he makes to Mims down the seam is as good a throw as you're going to see all year, and I know he had a couple interceptions in the game, but look, those sometimes are just plays you've got to accept and move forward. But I thought he was outstanding. I was disappointed in Denver's defense, to be honest. I thought they would play better, but Levi Wallace is in a corner. I mean, 2 players got attacked last night. Emerson, 23 for the Brownies, and Levi Wallace for the Broncos. And I think, to me, both teams are – one team's headed in the right direction, should make the playoffs. The other team needs to figure out what they're going to do with Deshaun, because every single game now, the way Winston has played proves it wasn't the scheme, it wasn't the other players, it was the guy under center.
Yeah, well said. And again, you're watching that Marcus Mims throw that you're talking about. That's that 93-yard rocket shot from Bo Nix. I thought that, hey, the arm talent isn't there. No, the arm talent looks like it's there too. And look, we all knew that about Jameis Winston. The guy's got supreme arm talent. That's why he was a number 1 pick. But we also knew that sometimes the decision-making is going to be the bugaboo, and that did rear its ugly head at the end. Jameis talked about that, Michael, about his bugaboo, and if there's a way, maybe with divine intervention, to get rid of that once and for all.
I am a better player, but in times like this, it's an opportunity to continue to glorify the Lord even through the toughest circumstances. I know I'm better than this. I know I'm just praying for the Lord to deliver me from pick sixes. That's not me. A phenomenal game, offense, do some great things, but I messed it up.
Well, I don't think the Lord is worried about pick sixes. I hope he's not. I hope he has other agendas that he needs to deal with, starting with, the conflicts that are going on overseas, here in America and all that. However, I think one thing about Jameis, he does own up to it, and that's a good thing. He accepts responsibility for it. Look, it was a bad beat if you're a Bronco. If you had the Brownies and laying the 6.5 and taking the 6.5, it's a bad beat. It really is. I mean, I was going against Russo. Russo had Denver last night, and he pulled one out of his hat to go 3-0, and I ended up 2-1 because I couldn't stop the Jacksonville Jaguars when I'm up 23-6 with the Houston Texans. So that's how life goes on. We move forward, and things what happens. But I think clearly, Winston has improved this team's vibrancy offensively. Yeah. There's no question. They had 500 yards against a very good team. And they still don't have their left tackle, Willis, who's on sabbatical. I don't know what he's up to. He doesn't want to play because his contract's up, so they got to deal with that. But I think at least now, if you're Cleveland, that what the problems are. You can't hide them anymore. You just can't hide them anymore. You can't say it's the reason we're not as Van Pelt, or this is we don't have enough skill players. No, the reason is Watson isn't any good and you made a mistake, and let's deal with it.
Again, I can't agree more that it's so apparent and present when you watch any quarterback, let alone Jameis Winston, coming off the scrap heap here a couple teams later to put up a performance like that. 497 does give up the 2 pick sixes. We'd never seen that in the history of the NFL, to throw for over 450 and yet have 2 pick sixes in the game. The return yardage combined with the 497 throwing and the 3 picks, we've never had that. The most yards ever you're going to see from one guy in a Monday night game. But, Michael, the rubber hit the road for me watching this game last night because I was on the Broncos laying the 6. The whole handicap was I thought that Jameis Winston would give you one. I didn't know it would be 2 pick sixes in order to get that cover, but that's what you ultimately needed, were to get 2 pick sixes to cover that 6 points if you were on the Broncos last night. But I'm in a contest here in town, and I had the Broncos to cap off a 14-1 just straight up picking winners. But Michael, for me, it came down to that 4th down play before the 2-minute warning when the Broncos were down 1. You and I have talked about these scenarios before, and I felt like you got to kick it. You got to kick the field goal to take the lead. Sean Payton balked early. It looked like he was going to go for it, and then he changed his mind, called the timeout, and ultimately kicked it. I know the new math and maybe the new schoolers out there said, no, you should have gone for it. I thought he made the right decision. How did you view that in that moment?
Well, I think to me that's always the hardest place to be because you're playing in Denver, right? And you know that the long field goal is obviously in play because of the altitude. Now, I never trust Dustin Hopkins. Like if I were a GM of a team, there's no way Dustin Hopkins is my kicker. I just don't trust him. He missed one early in the game.
Yes.
So if you're Sean, there's a good chance Hopkins could miss, right? There's a good chance he missed one early with no pressure on him. How's he going to handle one later? But I think to me, you take the risk of winning the line of scrimmage, of winning the game at that point. If you're able to get that first down, you're probably going to burn the clock off and win the game right there, kick the field goal. But I think he took a risk with his defense, and it was really risky in my way because his defense never slowed down Cleveland the whole day. They really never slowed him down. But maybe he knew, Dave, that Winston in those situations is probably going to make a mistake. He coached him, so he knows him better than anybody, right?
Yeah.
Maybe he just felt like he knew, like, we could have put some pressure on him. We're going to get to him, and he'll make a mistake. I don't know if that was going through his head, but I think anytime you turn down the lead, it's probably not the smartest thing to do. You turn down the lead. Where else we saw that? We saw that earlier in the year. There was a game where
the Commanders against the Eagles.
Washington
That's exactly
Commanders
right.
turned down the lead, right?
Yeah.
So my sense of it, I don't know how you can turn down the lead. And you just got to pray and hope your defense can come through, and it did.
Exactly. I see it the same way. And I get the other argument. I think you laid it out perfectly as to what the other scenario would be. But Hopkins, as you mentioned, did miss one on that first drive of the game for the Browns. Those 3 points could have been critical. The other point I wanted to bring up very quickly, Jerry Jeudy. Where has this been, Michael? 235. Yeah, no. Like, I know it's the revenge game and all that stuff, and I'm glad he's got a chip on his shoulder about going back and Sean Payton let me go, and I want to, good. You should have professional pride and say, this is the guy that you let go. What'd you make of Jeudy and how he was able to, it looked like, seemingly be wide open every play?
He finally looked like a first-round pick, didn't he?
Yes.
I mean, I've been waiting for this to come along a long time. I mean, he averaged 26.1 yards per catch. I mean, he had 13 targets for 9 receptions. I mean, what Troy kept saying was, I don't know why they're not putting Surtain on him to follow him, but I think sometimes that's easier on a blackboard than it is with your defense because sometimes you can't adjust your defense and then they put him in stacked formations and it's harder to kind of get to it. And you've got to you really got to kind of tailor your team around with it. Look, he was great. I mean, look, all these receivers that you never even heard of, whether it was Thrash, whether it was Woods, I mean, they all made play. Hell, I didn't even realize Kadarius Toney was on the Browns. I lost sight of him.
Exactly.
Yeah, they brought him back. I mean, of course, he can't play for them either. So it just shows you that. But, I mean, I was impressed with that. Look, I think this whole the receiver thing. I think you could see both teams. I mean, Vele, the kid they drafted from Utah in the 7th round. I mean, he only had 1 catch in the game, but he's been a really good player for him all year. Mims averaged, with that 93-yarder, he was sensational. And Sutton's been really good. Sutton has gotten better as the year went on, but let's make no mistake about it. The Broncos have a bright future with Bo Nix. They really do. He's a good player. He knows how to operate within the scheme. He understands the scheme. He's playing way faster than he did earlier in the year. And what's improved more than anything is his accuracy. And now when they get this Russell Wilson burden off their salary cap, this is going to be a team that's just going to add some more young players to it. Sean's got a thing going there. Denver is for real. And if Kansas City don't watch out, Denver's going to kick them over.
Oof. By the way, it pays to watch the Lombardi Line. You and I discussed this yesterday. We said, if you like Denver to win the Monday night game, where's this number going to go? Last night, if you remember, yesterday we did the show, minus $1.70 for Denver to make the postseason. Now, Michael, minus 250 as 6-point favorites at home. So, again, we try to give you those actionable plays there at good value. And certainly that would be a good one to have in pocket 24 hours ago.
I mean, when you look at it, look, they're 8-5. They're tied with Baltimore. If I'd have told you they're tied, if I'd have asked a man on the street, Baltimore, who has a better record, Baltimore or Denver, what do you think the answer is going to be? right?
Yeah.
I mean, they got a 2-game lead on Indy. They got, Miami still has to play another game. But that game, I think, clearly seals Cincinnati from being out of it, right?
Yeah,
you can eliminate Cincy. They're done.
Take them off the graphic, Michael, right? No more in the hunt.
Take them off the They're not hunting. They're Elmer Fudd if they're in the hunt.
There is no hunt for the Bengals. By the way, Bo Nix now 6-0 straight up. ATS is a favorite this season. The first rookie quarterback in the Super Bowl era to start off 6-0 ATS. Pretty darn impressive. We're going to have Matt Youmans, going to have Jonathan Von Tobel on this edition of the Lombardi Line. So a lot to get to, including what's going on with the 49ers and where do they go from here. That's next here on the Lombardi Line.
Time. There's nothing more valuable. It's what drives everyone to make the most of every moment. We celebrate living large in the now. In a city where time disappears, we create experiences that electrify the soul and memories that will last forever. We go big, we go all night, and here, everyone is invited. So get loose and get loud.
This is Circa. You'll have the time of your life.
Tuesday on Follow the Money, we talked to Pat Forty, the madness in college football. You won't believe who he thinks makes the playoff. Also, we'll go over NFL picks and props with Adam Chernoff and Derek Stevens, the CEO of Circa. Follow the Money weekdays, 4 to 7 Eastern, VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Want to see who at VSiN is on a hot streak? Go to VSiN.com/picks to see all the selections and weekly leaderboard of VSiN hosts, writers, and guests. Become a VSiN Pro subscriber and get every pick sent to your inbox daily. Just head to VSiN.com/pro.
So, Paulie, have you had a chance to read the VSiN Daily yet?
Yeah, came in at 3 a.m. What's Bill doing up that late?
Well, rumor has it starts off with a 12-hour meditation session.
Then he just pours himself over film and live TV, really focusing and taking it all in. Bill's in with the biggest insiders, talking trade secrets, strategies, the whole nine, absorbing the info.
And then and only then can the writing process begin.
In Las Vegas, Bill's late night becomes your early morning. Wake up to the very latest betting insights in your inbox with the VSiN Daily. Sign up for free at vsin.com/newsletter.
This is the Lombardi Line with former NFL executive Michael Lombardi on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
We are back on the Lombardi Line. Dave Ross and Michael Lombardi here with you as Elliot Bowman, our producer. Michael says it's time to Bob Seger this thing, turn the page, and look ahead to week 4. Do you think Elliot knows Bob Seger? He knows, right?
I doubt it. I know one thing. Yeah. Oh, there he goes. He did. He told me in my headset, in my ear, he did. I've often Rick Gosselin, the great former writer of the Dallas Morning News, who's now retired. He does some stuff on Twitter. You can read him. He's tremendous. And he and I often said, I was 12 hours out of Mackinac City, stopped at a bar to have a brew. Everybody's been wondering where the hell that bar is to have the brew, right? Where he meets the girl and they headed up on the high plains, and then she left him somewhere around there. I think to me, Seeger's one of the great ones, and he really is.
Great storyteller, great music. And every time I do hear Turn the Page, you go, man, I just got to listen to this for the next 4 minutes. We are going to turn it ahead now to week number 14 for the Niners. Oof. I mean, it just gets worse.
Yeah.
CMC, we talked about it yesterday on the show. He's going to be out for the rest of the year, PCL sprain. But then it gets worse. Jordan Mason also added to the IR with an ankle injury. You don't want to say that it's over. I know there are only 2 games back. You heard Kyle Shanahan say yesterday, hey, we've got divisional games down the stretch. I know they're going to get a Garendo now at running back and try to piecemeal this thing together. Bosa didn't play again last week. 2 really devastating losses to Green Bay and Buffalo back-to-back. I mean, Michael, you've been a part of teams where you know that the injuries, you can't control them, but nobody's going to feel sorry for you either. Where do the Niners go from here?
Well, they just got to try to play their young players and see what they have. I mean, they know this is not a Super Bowl team, and they know that, 3 of the last 4 years, they've played in conference championship games. They've lost the Super Bowl. They've lost 2 conference championship games, and they won 35 games, regular season games over the last 3 years before this season. So they know that, they can get it back, but what they have to do now is figure out what they have. I mean, they start their offseason planning. They're not going to try to lose games. They're going to try to play well. But the one other tragedy that's involved, I mean, they've had 2 players that have lost babies.
Yes.
Right?
Oh, boy. Trent Williams.
And Trent Williams just lost his wife just lost their twins. And so that's heartbreaking. That's just something that I don't think we as fans understand how challenging that is to the families. And it's hard to say, I'm going to go play football when you just lost one of your kids. I mean, it's just impossible. So not only do they have injuries, they've had tragedies. And, who can predict those? And so I think that's the real hard part that comes in this. And look, I think that they're going to find out about Brock Purdy. But also, I think what Kyle's going to do is figure out what he has with his team and go from there and try to figure this out moving forward, how it's going to work out. What young players can he count on? Can Ricky Pearsall develop into a number 2, number 3 receiver? What about Jacob Cowling and then some of these young players they have on defense? Look, I don't think they're going to mail the season in, but I think it's going to be it's going to be harder and harder for them to win games. I mean, I'm surprised that they're favored by as much against Chicago as they were. The opening line was 6, which I don't see that at all.
No. Down to 3.5. Absolutely right. 6.5 and down to 3.5. I think for all the reasons that you just mentioned, Michael. And by the way, so glad you brought that up about Trent Williams. Covered him in D.C. Early on in his career. And, just one of those guys in the locker room, real straight shooter. Hope he and the family can. I don't even know how you focus on your career, like you mentioned, after a day like in a week like they're having. So you just hope for the best there. But you're right, from a team perspective, I don't know how you play the Niners with all those things combined.
Well, I think add in the element too, David. We know this here at VSiN because we have a strong presence in Chicago because of the Marquee Network. And we also know Bear fans. We have a lot of Bear fans that work with us. Bill A.D.'s a Bear fan. Brett Musburger, the great Brett Musburger's. We know Bear fans bet. And so if you like the Bears this weekend in Chicago with Thomas Brown taking over as the head coach and changing the tenor of the locker room, this line's going to go down to 3. I promise you. I think right now it's 3.5. You could still see some 4s out there, but there's going to be momentum because you and I both know Bear fans bet.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Bear fans bet. And they bet with their heart. They don't typically bet. Remember, they were betting Mitchell Trubisky to be MVP. That just shows you how Bear fans love their team. And I say that with all respect towards them, right? I think that's the thing. You have to kind of analyze, why is the number moving? Well, Bear fans are just great. They love their team, and they put their money where their mouth is. And so yesterday's press conference, we saw Ryan Poles and we saw Kevin Warren come out. Poles is going to be involved. He's going to pick the coach. You know, Kevin Warren saying this is going to be a really attractive job for anybody. No, it's not. No, it's not. I got 10 texts on my phone. You know, why would anybody want to go there and know that Poles is going to control the personnel? So they're going to have a hard – you think Ben Johnson's going to leave a really good job to go to Chicago and have to compete against them? And then you got to deal with Caleb Williams. You know, are you sure you want to do that? I think that's another fascinating thing that comes into this conversation. So, look, I think the Bears, they got to win some games. I wouldn't be surprised if the Bears turned their season around a little bit and Thomas Brown ended up being the head coach.
Oh, wow. You know, I'm glad you brought that up because I wanted to ask you about that. You're hearing the rumors that Kliff Kingsbury will be one of those guys possibly that they'll bring to Halas Hall at least to interview again. They did that last year. Like, I think people have already forgotten in the offseason, they brought in Kliff because he was the Caleb Williams guy from USC, right? And then I don't know how that played out and why he didn't go to Chicago, but he goes to D.C. with Jaden Daniels. Why would Kliff Kingsbury, if he said no, potentially, whether it was really offered or not, why would he then say, yeah, now is the right time to go get
I don't know if it was
Caleb?
offered. I don't know if it was offered. I don't think he ever came to Halas Hall. I think that Eberflus went to Los Angeles. The only person Eberflus brought back to Halas Hall for a formal interview was Shane Waldron, believe that or not. Okay, so that's my understanding. And look, I think Kliff's in a really good situation. I doubt if Kliff would leave. Why would he leave Jaden Daniels?
Right.
He's got a great opportunity in D.C. They've got a good young team. He's coaching a really good quarterback. Why would he walk into a place where he doesn't know who the general manager is? He's never worked with the general manager before. You know, people make this association. 1 + 1 doesn't always equal 2 here. And so I think people make this association. And look, you know, Kliff Kingsbury, I mean, as a head coach, is that where you want to go just because he has a relation? Again, let's go back to my whole theory. Let's stop trying to make Caleb Williams a better player. Let's make the team a better team.
There it is. Yeah.
And everybody in the media constantly wants to fix the quarterback by hiring somebody who's a quarterback coach. Well, we've been proven that they did that with Matt Nagy. Remember, they hired Matt Nagy to help Mitchell Trubisky. How'd that work out? They went to the playoffs in Matt's first year, and they couldn't go anywhere else. So they better find somebody who can build their team. As the great George McCaskey said yesterday, we got to find somebody who understands our fan base and understands what it means to be here. Yeah, they need a tough guy. And they need somebody that can manage their team the correct way. We'll see what Thomas Brown can do. He said all the right things yesterday.
Yeah, took some ownership, too, over why Eberflus is not there anymore, and took some of that ownership. I kind of like to hear that as well. Aaron Rodgers is a guy, Michael, that maybe some would say doesn't take a whole lot of ownership over what's going on with that sinking ship in New York or New Jersey.
They're going to get bet again, aren't they, this week? Are they going to get bet again? Are these idiots going to bet the Jets again? I mean, seriously.
Of course
are they going to
are.
bet the Jets again? I mean, like, why are you betting the Jets? Just call St. Jude's up, please. Give that money to those kids. It's Christmas time. They need as much help. I'll do it. I do it all the time. I never turn down a St. Jude's phone call. But why would you bet the Jets here? Why?
You get
It's
6.5.
up to 7, Dave. It's
Oh,
it's 6.5, 7 in the market.
At Miami, and Jeff Ulbrich, the interim head coach, says that Aaron Rodgers will remain the head coach. He will remain the starting quarterback. Maybe he is the head coach down there in Miami, at least for one more week. Look, I don't know how you bet the Jets. It's a running joke for us. It's also been very profitable because I bet Seattle, and I sweated that out down 14-0 last week. And sure enough, Rodgers and the offense really didn't do anything else the rest of the game and let that Seattle comeback with a big pick six, by the way, against Aaron Rodgers. So they're getting 6.5 down there in Hard Rock. I feel like it's another good spot for Miami coming off a real bad loss in Green Bay. They get warm and get back home. But what is the bigger picture there with Aaron? What do they do with Rodgers?
Well, I mean, to me, this is going to be fascinating because they're going to hire a new general manager, and the GM's going to want to turn the page and get on with this program. I mean, they need a quarterback. Let's be clear. They need a quarterback. And so I think they have no choice. I don't know why they're hanging on, but I think this is more about respect than anything.
Yeah.
Like, they can't just throw the guy at the curb. I mean, the guy's a Hall of Fame player. You got to handle things because how you treat Rodgers is going to impact how the other players view you, right? I think, to me, I think that's the case. I think how you view that, how you handle him, so you've got to do it. It would be a lot easier if he had an injury, then they could just put him on the shelf. But for them to bench him, to say that Tyrod Taylor gives him what are we trying to do? Are we really trying to win, or we rather have a high draft pick?
Well said. Speaking of winning, if you want to play Pick 6 from DraftKings, you can do that now. It's an official partner of the NBA. Very simple to get started. All you got to do is download the DraftKings Pick 6 app. Jameis Winston not involved in this promo. And all you have to do is, you can do more or less on a stat like points, rebounds, three-pointers, and more. Pick 6 players can play $5, get up to $50 in Pick 6 credits. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now. Use code VSiN. That's VSIN for new customers. $5 to get to $50 in Pick 6 credits only on DraftKings Pick 6. When we come back, Matt Youmans will get his thoughts on last night and looking ahead to Week 14 of the NFL.
Betting game with VSiN's exclusive betting splits. Stay ahead with real-time market trends and track bet percentages on any matchup, then uncover the edge by comparing them to the amount of bets placed to find out where the sharp money is headed. Upgrade to VSiN Pro to access betting splits, live odds, line moves, power ratings, and in-depth game analysis. Go to VSiN.com/pro to join VSiN, the sports betting network.
This is VSiN, the sports betting network.
This is the Lombardi Line with former NFL executive Michael Lombardi on VSiN, the sports betting network.
We are back on the Tuesday edition of the Lombardi Line. Dave Ross and Michael Lombardi here with you. And after one of the wildest Monday night games we've ever seen, we're going to bring in our guy, Matt Youmans. Of course, does a great job on the network. Friday Football Invitational here at Circa Sports. Follow Matt as I do on X at Matt Youmans247. Joins us now on the Progressive Guest Line. Matt, where do you begin? Because I think Michael and I were trying to go, do you start with Jameis? Do you start with the Broncos, Bo Nix, Jerry Jeudy? What's your takeaway from Monday night's wild one last night?
Monday night football games now 12-4 over the total this season. That was a wild one last night. It might have looked like a bit of a bland matchup on paper. It turned into a highly entertaining game. You have to start with Jameis Winston. So he passed for 497 yards. The Broncos had 171 interception return yards against Winston. The 668 combined passing yards and interception return yards are the most by any quarterback in a game in NFL history. How about that? Last night, and the Broncos went into the game. Denver defense ranked number 2 in the NFL in scoring, 16.8 points per game, and the Browns just moving up down the field and lighting them up last night. But again. And again, that's a really bad beat if you had the Browns and the points last night. But bad teams find ways to lose games, as we saw with the Bears and the Raiders around Thanksgiving last week. And I love what Sean Payton and the Broncos coaching staff are doing with this team. Now, I know the critics are going to say they beat up on a soft schedule, right? They beat the Raiders twice. They beat up on the NFC South. But that's a big part of the NFL. You got to beat the teams you're supposed to beat, and that's what the Broncos are doing.
No question they're doing it. And, you got to credit Sean. I think Bo Nix was sensational in the game, and I thought it was the cap off to a great weekend. Matt, how did you make out this past weekend with all your bets?
I think on the 5 plays I put up on VSiN, I went 4-1, so I had a pretty good week. Overall, it was I guess it could have been a little bit better because I lost with the Ravens. That was the one favorite. I had played a few favorites. Usually I play a lot of dogs, but I played a few favorites, and I lost with the Ravens. I love the Steelers. That was my favorite play of the weekend. But, back to Bo Nix for a second. Going into last night's game, 795 passing yards and 8 touchdowns with no interceptions in the previous 3 games. And I think this race for Rookie of the Year is going to tighten up. Jaden Daniels had a really nice game, obviously against the Titans, to come back a little bit here. But don't count out Bo Nix because he's getting hot, and I think you're seeing Sean Payton develop him the right way here. That was a sensational 93-yard touchdown pass last night.
Yeah, I'm trying to see the updated numbers on that, by the way. Daniels is minus 220 here, Matt. Bo is plus $1.80. So remember, you could have got like 3-1 on Bo a week ago. That's already been shortened there. So it does feel like a 2-horse race. Also, Matt, I was looking at this yesterday with the conclusion of Week 13. Just if you go by the Sunday game and the Monday night game, just forget about point spreads, just winning the game outright. 4-8 for the road teams won 8 out of the 12 games this weekend on Sunday and Monday. How do you look at home field advantage? Like typically 3 points is what we traditionally had done. Is that kind of gone by the wayside now?
Yeah, it's been gone by the wayside for a while. Nobody looks at it as traditional 3 points anymore. Now there are exceptions to that rule. Like I love the Bills against the 49ers on Sunday night, but a lot of that had to do with the snow and all the injury attrition that the 49ers are dealing with, right? It looks like the wheels are falling off the 49ers, and it looks like 49ers have been a team you want to fade for the past few weeks or so, or even longer. So home field advantage in that situation with Buffalo was a little bit different, right? But in most cases right now, I don't even pay much attention to home field advantage or even think about it. Maybe it's worth 1.5 in a lot of cases. But in Buffalo's case on Sunday night, I think it meant a lot more. And by the way, I had a pretty good week. I think Michael had a good week. Nobody's hotter than Dave Ross right now. I heard some buzz around town last night that Dave Ross is, 14-1, 14-1 in week 13. Is that right? Winners?
It is, Matt. But again, I'm sweating that out last night with the Broncos. You know, I'm like, okay, just win the game. And I'm like, do I want him to kick the field goal here at the 4th and 1 outside of the 2 minutes? I didn't know what to root for, but you're right, man. I was sweating that out. 14-1. Got very fortunate, obviously, with the Colts going for 2. That was a pick. So now we wait here in the William Hill contest and see if it's good enough to get some money. Matt, I'm just trying to get up to somebody like you on your levels on a week-in, week-out basis. When you look at the Packers Thursday night to kick off Week 14 against the Lions, they're getting 3.5. Michael and I have talked about it before. It feels like they're playing more physical, right? They're kind of Josh Jacobs a little bit. I know we always talk about Jordan Love and all those receivers. The physicality of the Packers, do you like the way they're playing now? Even though the record's been good all year, I feel like they're playing better football than they were earlier in the season.
No, there's no doubt about that. In fact, I have not been impressed with Jordan Love the entire season. I think he's been a little bit off. I don't know what the deal has been, but he has not played as well as he did late last season. Well, maybe he's starting to play a little better. I think the Packers are maybe peaking here. And if you look at the Packers last season, this is when they got hot too. So maybe it's going to be a trend with this team. But also, when I look at this game Thursday night, it's a hell of a matchup. I'm concerned from the Lions' perspective about the injury attrition on the Detroit defense. You lose Alex Anzalone, one of your better run stoppers, and I think the injuries are going to start to catch up with Detroit a little bit. I'll give you a startling number from that game against the Bears on Thanksgiving. Lions had 279 yards of offense before the Bears had a first down, and they still barely hung on to win the game. Wow. And that's a troubling sign to me because the Bears started to move up and down the field against that Detroit defense. And I think the Packers are going to run it here with Josh Jacobs and be probably a lot more effective than they were. Don't forget now the Packers are 7-1 in their last 8, and that one loss is to the Lions in Week 9. And I kind of like these division revenge matchups. And you're getting the Packers plus 3.5, and I'm going to play the dog on Thursday night.
Yeah, I mean, look, they went down there last year on Thanksgiving Day and whooped them pretty good. That's when Jordan Love kind of turned it around. And you're right. I mean, short week, the Lions are just a beat-up unit. They're just not the same team as they once were defensively, and they need Taylor Deckard back at left tackle really to help them offensively. The Rams kind of had a better second half. I never felt like they were in control of the game. It was a good thing that Ricky Fowler Carr was able to not put the ball in the end zone or convert a third down, and they were able to get out of there with the win. But you're going to take them this week in the 4.5 against the Bills.
Yeah, I think the Bills were laying a little bit too much here on the road. Going to the West Coast. I was at the game last year, the Bills-Chargers game at SoFi, when the Chargers were just a destitute team. They had nothing going for them. Brandon Staley had been fired. They were playing Easton Stick at quarterback, and the Bills barely they won the game but didn't cover, and they had to struggle to win that game in L.A. against a bad Chargers team. And I think this is going to be a tough spot for the Rams here against a tough spot for the Bills against a Rams team that's really, I think, going to start to play a lot better offensively. Kyron Williams and Blake Corum combined for 146 yards rushing against the Saints. Matthew Stafford's still got Puka Nacua, DeMarcus Robinson, and Cooper Kupp all healthy now and playing well. I really like the potential of the Rams offense. And again, we talked about it on your show a couple weeks ago. Jared Verse is a monster. And I think the Rams got enough speed on that defensive front seven to kind of contain Josh Allen a little bit. 4.5 is a big number to cover on the road, even though the Rams don't have typically great home field advantage. I'm not really factoring that into it. I think the Rams can go toe-to-toe with the Bills here, and I'll take the 4.5.
And I know that the Bills have said, hey, you know, they've already won the AFC East. They're trying to get that 1 seed, but sometimes human nature after you clinch could be a bit of a letdown there. You mentioned dimension.
Let me tell you one more thing. Sorry, one more thing just based on that matchup, and Michael's probably seen it. If the Bills have a weakness, you can run the ball at that Buffalo defense.
Absolutely.
I think that's what the Rams are going to try to do, too.
Matt, when you play the Bills, it's like playing $5 blackjack. You've got to be willing to take 4-yard gains. You got to be willing to run it. You can't go backwards. You can't give up a sack. That's what they live for, that one play. But they're 28th in the league in yards per attempt rushing allowed. So you can run the ball. San Francisco, but the problem is you get down to the red zone, you kick a field goal, they score a touchdown, and then all of a sudden you're down 14-3, and now you're thinking you can't run the ball. They're counting on you to not run it. What they're also counting on is it's going to take you 8 to 12 plays to score a touchdown. Right? And so they're counting on you to mess up one of those 8 to 12 plays.
Very quickly, got about 45 seconds, Matt. You got an ugly dog of the week that you like this week?
You know, I'm going to look at the Chargers against the Chiefs. But I'll tell you what, I'll talk about that probably a little bit more on the show tonight because I've been working on the Chiefs. I'm gonna throw this one at you and see what Michael thinks of it too. This is a team that's played a bunch of big games on a winning streak and it's got bigger games on deck. I hate to play the worst teams on the board, but how about the Carolina Panthers plus 12.5 against the Philadelphia Eagles team that might be asleep at the wheel this week in kind of a sleepy spot? What do you think, Michael?
Yeah, I mean, I'm never good with these high spreads, but I think to me it is a trap game for Philly. It is. I'm not saying they're going to lose, but it is a trap one.
Maybe take those 12.5. Matt, always great catching up, man.
Thanks, Matt.
Again, joins us here on the Progressive Guest Line. Much more Contender Pretender next.
Got a good thing coming, so wait and see. It's a good.
You spoke, we listened. Introducing the all-new VSiN Watch app. Now, you can watch and listen to VSiN expert analysis live wherever you are. Missed a show? No problem. Catch replays of VSiN's full lineup at any time. View highlights sorted by sport. Or use the search feature to find specific teams and topics you're looking for. And the best part? It's free for a limited time. Download the VSiN Watch app today. Available now on the App Store and Google Play. And join us on the Sports Betting Network.
This is the Lombardi Line with former NFL executive Michael Lombardi on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
We continue the Tuesday edition of the Lombardi Line. Dave Ross and Michael Lombardi here with you with Week 13 in the books. We're in December. Great having Matt Youmans, by the way, on in the last segment. Going to have JVT, his partner here on the network, join us a little bit later on in hour number 2. I feel like, well, you certainly know at this stage of the season what team you have, right? You know it,
right?
Like whether we're
No
real.
question.
Sometimes the public doesn't know, but you know certainly as an executive. Let's start off with a little contender pretender. I think people think they know, but I don't know if they really know. If that makes sense. The Ravens, because you look at them, Michael, and you go, yeah, of course they're a contender. You got Lamar, you got Derrick Henry, you got a Harbaugh. So it feels like they should be a contender. But, Michael, they're 8-5. So when you really kind of pull back the veil of this football team, are the Ravens a true to win the Super Bowl now, contender or pretender?
Oh, I definitely think they're a contender. They can win the Super Bowl, but they could also get beat in the first round. I mean, they have that kind of team. You know, I think if you're a Raven fan, let's take the positives, right? You played your best defense against a team that is really good offensively. You can say, well, we didn't win the game. Well, you didn't win the game because you didn't make the plays you needed to make, and you're going to have to make a decision on your field goal kicker here. I think that's really kind of clear. But this team has improved. There's no question. Defensively, they are getting better. Right. And so I think, to me, you've got a great opportunity. Look, here's one of the things you're always constantly looking for is, you know, when they're good in the red zone, the Ravens have the ability, you know, they typically were the first best red zone. They're the first best red zone team in football. They're first in EPA. They're second in successful plays. They're great in a lot of categories. And so they had a bad day. You know, they're coming off a big road win in Los Angeles. They came back, and Philadelphia kind of whooped them up front. And I think you can learn from it. But we've seen this before, David. Like, how many people, if I could show you the text that I've got from really smart people after the Chiefs lost to the Raiders on Christmas Day and said, well, that's the end of the Chiefs, right? Well, it wasn't the end of the Chiefs. They went on the road and they won games. They beat Miami, went to Buffalo, went to Baltimore, won the Super Bowl. So I think clearly Baltimore is in this mix completely.
All right, now, I didn't text you, but for the record, I would have been guilty as charged. Like, I didn't see that coming from the Chiefs last year, but that's the rule, and that's kind of the lesson that you're pointing out. Like, don't count all these teams out.
One thing I think Baltimore has to do, though, David, is, you know, I just going through my notes. They're last in penalties, 31st in offensive penalties, last in defensive penalties. They're last in penalty yards. They're last in penalty margin. They're last in penalty yards, offensive penalties, EPA 15.5, and they're 27th in offensive EPA 9.94. If they don't clean up the penalties, they're not going to get there. That's John Harbaugh's bye-week mandate. We got to clean up the penalties, and we got to get a better kicker.
Yeah, by the way, I would not have expected that from a John Harbaugh-led team. So, yeah, you're right. On that bye week, you would hope they'd clean that up. And for the record, everybody, we're not talking Bills and Chiefs are 5-1 to win the Super Bowl. The Lions and the Eagles in the NFC. We know those teams obviously are legit contenders. We're trying to go a little bit for teams that we actually think have the possibility of winning the Super Bowl. Let's stay in the AFC. Let's stay in the same division. And the current leader of said division, it's the Pittsburgh Steelers, which I don't think a lot of people had on their bingo card in December. They would be leading the AFC North. You can get them at 22-1 to win the Super Bowl. Michael, I look at them and I go, I'm convinced they're as good as anybody in the AFC, and I didn't feel that way at the beginning of the year. Are they a pretender or a contender?
You know, everybody wants to dismiss them. I mean, how many people at our network were screaming that you got to bet the under on the Pittsburgh win total? And here we are in week 14, and they've already cashed that number, right? I mean, so, you know, you can't underestimate. Look, they have a couple things that really work in their favor. They have a great field goal kicker.
Yes.
Right? They have a really great defense that can turn the ball over, that can rush the passer. So that's two things. They can run the football. They will run the football. Arthur Smith has done, I think he's offensive coach of the year. I think he's done a tremendous job, you know, and so they're able to run the football. They're able to get control of the line of scrimmage. Their offensive line is improving, and Wilson is making just enough plays. I mean, what has happened to the Pittsburgh Steelers is when we watched Matt Canada try to run an offense and he wasn't equipped to be an offensive coordinator in the NFL, and we see Arthur Smith come in and do it, you have to say to yourself, well, that's professional coaching. That's what you need. That's what makes a difference. And so I think there's no question that Pittsburgh's going to be a tough out. I think, the uglier the game, the more Pittsburgh likes it, right? And last week, to me, was a real indicator that Pittsburgh's for real because they got into a track meet. And during the game, I'm writing notes watching all these games. And I wrote down, Pittsburgh can't play a track meet. And guess what happened, David? They played a track meet. And they were able to win the track meet. And they finally got control of the game. They turned the ball over. Their physicality wears you down the longer the game becomes.
Yeah, until Jameis Winston did what he did last night. Russell Wilson had been the only guy to go over 4 Bills passing on the weekend. And then, of course, Jameis Winston almost went for 5 last night in that loss. How about the Chargers in the AFC, Michael? Because I look at them, when we look contender, pretender, speaking of Harbaugh, the other Harbaugh, Jim, I think we all understand how valuable he is as a coach in flipping that organization. But 35-1 to win the Super Bowl, contender or pretender?
I think they're a pretender, and only because I think that he's made them good. They're not great. They're not explosive enough on offense. And I think the J.K. Dobbins injury affects them. Yep. Gus Bradley. I was really disappointed with their offensive line last week against a bad Atlanta front. They got their butts kicked. Now, maybe they were coming off the week of playing Baltimore, but they hung in there. They only gained 167 yards. I think this is a contending team. I think they're a great story. I knew they would hit their over total. I think it was really a walk in the park.
Yep.
I don't know why the Raiders would not have hired Jim Harbaugh. It was the easiest decision you could have ever made. It was so easy that you should have done it immediately. And instead, they hired Antonio Pierce because that's what the players wanted, right? And yet they would have if they would have hired Jim Harbaugh, all the players would have forgotten about Antonio Pierce and enjoyed winning as opposed to dealing with what they're dealing with. So for me, I think he's done a great job, but he just doesn't have enough as a team. I think the team is just short in some areas. But here's where I think they gain an advantage, right? One of the things they're so good in the red area, and this is something we don't talk enough about, is can you play run defense in the red area? If you can play run defense in the red area, you become a better team because teams can't run the ball. What's the hardest thing to do in football is to get the ball into the end zone. It's hard to separate. Yeah. It's hard to make a play. And so when you can run the ball in the red area, that makes you you score points. You can't do that on the Chargers. That's why they're in all these games. Their red zone defense is so effective. It keeps them in the game. Now, they have a great quarterback, but he didn't look great last week, and they don't have enough skill players to really highlight his talent.
Well said. And again, you go back to last year, they couldn't stop the run. And now all of a sudden, Jim Harbaugh comes in and does exactly what you're talking about.
Well, that's because they're tough.
They're physical.
They preach toughness. They weren't analytical. They preached toughness. Yep. It was about fundamentals and techniques and playing off blocks and fitting and runs. And he's got everybody buying into it. Part of the problem is when you start going for it on 4th down and you start trying to do these stupid things, you lose your team. You lose credibility with your team.
Yeah, a little thing called momentum. They don't seem to talk about that in the book.
That doesn't exist, right?
It doesn't exist. How about the Packers? Big one Thursday night, getting 3.5 in Detroit. If they win that game, Michael, they kind of get back in the mix to win the division. I know it sounds crazy, like we've already anointed Detroit, but you would think that'd be the best way to win a Super Bowl. They're 14-1 to win a Super Bowl. Contender or pretender?
They're to me on the fence. I'm not. Of course, I'm influenced by Big Daddy's constant complaining of the Packer defense, and they can't stop anybody. And yet, I think Big Daddy thinks it's high school where everybody should they should win 49-0 every week. Like he doesn't understand it's the NFL and it's really hard. I think they're on the fence because I think what Matt Youmans said is true. I think Jordan Love is not playing great. I think Jordan Love misses throws. I think Jordan Love is not what we've made him out to be in terms of all the excitement and that we're ready to put him in the upper echelon of great quarterbacks in the National Football League. I don't see that. I think to me, he's coming off the injury. When you go back and watch him last year, the 4th quarter against San Francisco, he wasn't great in that game. As much as we want to highlight his skill set, I think he's not quite where we want him to be. There's a perception of where he is, but the reality of where he is isn't the same thing. So I think he's got to play better for them to get to that next level. I mean, look, if you look at just the analytical base, he's 14th in the league in terms of all when you rate all the numbers, slightly ahead of Baker Mayfield, slightly ahead of of Kyler Murray. I mean, he's behind Kyler Murray. So I think he's a middle-of-the-pack quarterback. And to win a title, he's got to get up there. Whereas Russell Wilson, David, he's sixth in all these categories. He's really improved his game.
We were told that Justin Fields had to be the starter there in Pittsburgh. That's what all the pundits told us. By the way, right now at VSiN.com, Michael, if you're not a VSiN Pro subscriber, what are you doing? Greg Peterson, Hoops, he's got you covered in college basketball. Josh Applebaum with his college football insights. Steve Makinen, great numbers. Zach Cohen, NBA. Adam Shine, his week number 9, his column is Shine 9. Jonathan Davis with hockey. What are you doing? Get over there right now as little as $9.99. VSiN.com. Hour number 2, straight ahead of the Lombardi Line.
Mitch Moss and Paulie Howard share their knowledge of sports, gambling, and pop culture on Follow the Money at a